What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Bush coming at you solo. You guys know the drill. It's Wednesday. We're talking about quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends from every game, every matchup of Week 10. You guys know the drill as well. I'll mention the timestamps right now. They're going to be in the description. They'll be on the screen as well. If you feel like you need to skip ahead to a game, you only want to know about one start-sit decision, and you want to skip ahead to the Broncos game and find that out, then you can go ahead and do that. We're going to get right into this without any further ado. All right, guys, before we get into this, if at any point during this video you guys feel like you received some value from it, hit the like button, leave any of your comments, any questions that you might have, trade targets, start sit, any of the above will work down below in the comment section, and subscribe for more great content. Hit the bell so you're notified anytime we post videos. All right, so into the bye weeks for this week, we have the New York Jets, Kansas City Chiefs, Dallas Cowboys, and Atlanta Falcons on bye. So there's definitely some fantasy relevant players, some fantasy relevant running backs, Zeke and Gurley and CEH on bye, a lot of receivers as well. So as always, at this point in the year, we're starting to have to start deeper guys because everyone is on bye weeks. The bye weeks will slow down week 12 and then week 13 and 14 and then into playoffs as well. So to the fastest paced games of the week, per Football Outsiders, according to Neutral Pace, Buffalo and Arizona is set to be the fastest paced game. And it's really not even that close. It's going to be the fastest paced game of the slate. So you definitely want pieces from this game. Indianapolis at Tennessee, also pretty fast paced. Houston at Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Pittsburgh. So those are the four games that you're going to want to attack the most if you're playing DFS or whatever. But in general, they're going to have more fantasy scoring than the other games just because there's going to be more offensive plays ran. To Thursday Night Football. And finally, we have what I think is an interesting game. Quarterback-wise in this game, we have Ryan Tannehill and Phillip Rivers. I think you can stream both of them. Rivers only if you're desperate, but I think Tannehill is a solid stream as well. Tannehill is kind of in for a rough stretch going up against the defense that is allowing dead last fantasy points to the quarterback position last week, and now the second to last this week. So he is. I mean, we saw him have a down game against Chicago. I don't think he's going to have that great of a game against Indianapolis as well. He's still in my top 15, but he's not a locked-in guy, and I would probably start some more borderline guys like Baker Mayfield over a guy like Ryan Tannehill because this matchup is just not great. On the flip side, as I mentioned, Phillip Rivers has shown he's actually usable in decent matchups, but again, I'd only start him if my other options were like Jake Luton and Teddy Bridgewater and Nick Foles. Like I wouldn't be starting Phillip Rivers if you have any semblance of a decent quarterback. To the running back position in this game, you obviously would be starting Derrick Henry 3 straight weeks. You're obviously starting Derrick Henry because, I mean, he's Derrick Henry. He is a dude that you need to be monitoring, though, if you are trying to win the title this year. His playoff schedule is absolutely gorgeous because, I mean, if you look at his schedule, he's got like Jacksonville, bunch of just absolutely cupcake matchups in there, and he's a great trade target. If you're looking to get over the top, maybe you have a guy that's performing pretty highly that you think you can flip for Derrick Henry, who's kind of had a couple of down games. I definitely go out and make that move if you can because Derrick Henry has an excellent playoff schedule and he will definitely help you win a championship if you have him for the playoffs. And then in this game also, you can flex Jonathan Taylor, I would say. 3 straight weeks, we've seen Jonathan Taylor's snap share decrease, and he recorded a season low touch total after fumbling last week. But he did start to look decent before that fumble, and this is a good matchup. So I currently have him running back 26 behind Rojo, Dobbins, Zach Moss, kind of at the end of that tier of guys we expect to get the workload, but we're not surprised if they don't get the workload. So Jonathan Taylor, I do think he's startable. Obviously, you don't want to be relying on him, so hopefully he's like a flex play for you and not your RB1 or RB2. For me and the listener league, he's actually my RB1 because I have Eckler out and a number of other guys on bye. So to the wide receiver position in this game, you're going to start A.J. Brown. So I have flex Corey Davis here, but prayers up to Corey Davis and his family. His brother actually passed away from cancer, so I'm not exactly sure if Corey Davis is going to play in this game. I'd imagine he probably won't play. So sad news for him, obviously, but it does upgrade A.J. Brown and Jonnu Smith and any other pass catchers in the Titans offense. And then to the Colts side of things, you want to emergency flex kind of Pittman and Marcus Johnson. I don't really want to get too cute and start those guys. But Davis busting, to be honest, was pretty predictable in my opinion. I think if you sold him high based on the AJ Brown comparable numbers and production that he had, I didn't expect that to keep up. I think Corey Davis is having a great season, but he's not at the talent level that AJ Brown is. So I would still consider him the wide receiver 2 in this offense. He's still usable at wide receiver 36 in this matchup, of course, if he does play. So I think you can throw him out there if you need to. AJ Brown, on the other hand, has 5 straight games with a touchdown and is consistently getting 7 to 9 targets per week, locked and loaded, wide receiver 1 this week, despite the semi-tough matchup for wide receivers. I don't care, because AJ Brown is that good. He is proving to be an elite receiver in this league. And if you can see the matchups on the screen right now, you have AJ Brown going up against Xavier Rhodes, who had a bit of a nice start to the season, but is starting to slow down and show his age a little bit more. And then Corey Davis, again, if he plays, he'll go up against Rocky Sin. And if he doesn't play, I mean, I don't think Adam Humphries is going to play in this game, but it, again, as I mentioned, it does upgrade Jonnu Smith. It does upgrade AJ Brown. And then to the Colts side of things, none of the receivers are exciting, but Michael Pittman Jr. looked decent last week with a high snap share and 7 targets. The matchups, as you'll see on the screen, none of them are actually favored to win their matchups. So again, if you don't need to, don't start any of these guys, but Pittman Jr. and Marcus Johnson are inside my top 60 receivers. So if you're absolutely desperate, I think you could start them. And then to the tight end position, you start Jonnu Smith, and then you would sit all Colts tight ends. So Jonnu may not have gotten elite volume last week. He's really not that type of tight end anyway, but he did run 20 routes, which is as many as AJ Brown, and he played 52 out of 55 snaps, which was the most out of any offensive player not on the offensive line or quarterback who plays every snap. So as far as I'm concerned, he's still a top 8 guy. And as I mentioned, if Corey Davis is out, he does see an uptick, and he's probably a top 6 guy, top 5 guy potentially this week with those guys out. Tight ends for the Colts, they split snaps almost right down the middle, with Mo Alie-Cox last week leading the way in yards, snaps, and receptions. So I don't trust any of these dudes. They all run similar routes. Trey Burton actually leads the way in routes run, but their snap shares, their usage in the passing game, like it's just a messy situation. And I don't think you're going to know week over week whether it's a Mo Alie-Cox week, a Trey Burton week, if Jack Doyle decides to do something. They're all just kind of interchangeable. So I'm not really relying on any Colts tight ends if I can help it. To the 1 p.m. slate, Philadelphia at New York Giants. You start Carson Wentz and stream Daniel Jones in this game. Carson Wentz has 2 touchdowns in 4 straight games and is finally getting some semblance of weapons and of offensive playmakers around him. So I think he should be a consistent QB1 going forward with the emergence of guys like Fulgham, Jalen Reagor coming back, Dallas Goedert coming back, I think, and Miles Sanders coming back this week. I think all this makes for a better offense, a better Eagles offense, and probably better performances for Carson Wentz and better fantasy performances as a result of that. So Daniel Jones in this game should be a spot where you can stream him. I think you can use him. He's not a great option, but he is usable. He's inside my top 20. So if you need to stream Daniel Jones, if you have Matt Ryan or Patrick Mahomes on bye or whatever, I think you can go ahead and do that. To the running back position in this game, you start Miles Sanders if he plays, which I think he will, and then flex Devontae Freeman. If Devontae Freeman is not healthy again, then you would start Wayne Gallman. As I mentioned, Sanders practiced last week and is on track to play this week, but I would expect a slight downtick in his usage, but he still should be a top kind of 15 guy. Devontae Freeman apparently was close to playing last week, so I'd expect him to be back for this one. If he does play in this one, he's a top 30 guy, and if he doesn't, Gallman is actually a top 26 guy. At the wide receiver position in this game, obviously you can start Travis Fulgham. He's shown that he's pretty much an every week starter, 5+ receptions and 70+ yards in each of the last 4 games for Travis Fulgham. He's pretty much just been excellent ever since he started to emerge. And as I mentioned, it's a much needed piece for the Eagles passing game because, I mean, we were close to seeing another year of Carson Wentz throwing to practice squad guys again. And then Jalen Reagor in this game also is a dart throw type of play, but I mean, he has upside for a big play and some targets in this one, but I don't think he's anything special. I don't think he's a great option this week. So if you could find other options, I would do that. And then to the Giants side of things, I actually have Sterling Shepard ranked higher than Darius Slayton in this one due to a likely shadow matchup from Darius Slay, as you can see on the screen right now. And the fact that Shepard has had 8, 10, and 8 targets since returning from his injury, both guys are in low-end wide receiver 3 range for me. And then on the Eagles side of things, you can see the matchups there. James Bradbury will likely be on Travis Fulgham, whether it's a shadow matchup or not. So that obviously puts a little damper on him. But yeah, as you can see, his PFF grade's incredible. He's been really good this year. But it could be a bit of a down game for him going up against Bradbury with maybe Reagor and Greg Ward take the load at the receiver position, or and this is a good segue into the tight end position, Dallas Goedert. Goddard is finally back and healthy after his first game back. I mean, players tend to struggle their first game back off of injuries, but he did run 80% of snaps, 29 routes, and then plus they had a bye, so he also got more healthy in that stretch. So let's see if Ertz misses more time, but if Ertz continues to miss time, we're going to see the Goddard will be a top 3 tight end crowd if they were actually right when they said if Zach Ertz goes down, Dallas Goedert's top 3 tight end. Let's see it, because I think he has a chance to be that. He was playing super well before his injury, but I'm not ready to write home and say that he's a top 5 tight end automatically just because Zach Ertz is out. And then Evan Ingram, he's also in my top 12. Ingram is finally starting to play better. Like, targets were never an issue for him. He was always getting the targets, but he was just, I mean, he wasn't catching them, and 2, he wasn't doing much after the catch with them. So hopefully Ingram can continue his kind of ascension the back half of the season and become a solid option for you if you have him. To the next game, Jacksonville at Green Bay. You can stream Jake Luton if you're desperate. I probably wouldn't, but you could. And then start Aaron Rodgers, obviously. So the Jags are practically giving fantasy points away. They're top 3 among defenses, allowing 25 points per game to the quarterback position. So Aaron Rodgers is probably going to have a good game in this one. If you're going up against Aaron Rodgers, I pray for you, because he might have another 40-point outing. And then I keep saying Jake Luton, Jake Luton. I think it's Jake Luton, but I keep saying Jake Luton for some reason. Jake Luton was solid, but Houston's defense is pure dog shit. So it's good to know that Luton can at least support DJ Chark if we need him to, but I wouldn't be relying on him, as I mentioned, if you don't have to. Running back wise in this game, both guys are auto starts. Obviously, you start James Robinson and you start Aaron Jones every week. Aaron Jones hasn't had a monster game, I would say, since week 2. This one should be big for him. He's currently my RB1 on the week, and I think he's going to have like a 35, 40-point game. So again, if you're going up against him, I'm sorry, but you're probably going to lose this week. And then James Robinson, you'll see this on the screen. The worst tackling team in football are the Green Bay Packers. If you can see the PPR points that they are allowing to the running back position, Dalvin Cook torched them. Alvin Kamara torched them. Ronald Jones did well against him. Todd Gurley did well against him. David Johnson did well against him. Jerick McKinnon did well against him. James Robinson gets crazy amount of volume, and he's probably going to do pretty well in this game. So the 2 running backs definitely probably going to carry the load offensively for these 2 teams. Wide receiver-wise in this game, Devontae Adams, you definitely start him. You start DJ Chark. You emergency flex anyone else. Adams is set to see Sidney Jones in coverage if you can see that. But I don't really care if primetime Deion Sanders is covering Devontae Adams, because the way he is playing this season, he's going to get his 100 yards and 2 touchdowns per game every game. He is the number 1 receiver in fantasy right now, and I don't even think it's close. I know Hopkins was kind of making a case for it earlier, but I think it's Adams by a landslide right now. And then Chark's emergence with Jake Luton, or Luton, again, I'm just ruining his name, is big. But Jair Alexander's status for this game looms as the difference between Chark being like a mid wide receiver 2 for me or a high end wide receiver 3. If he is if Jair Alexander is going to miss this game with the concussion that he suffered last Thursday night, then DJ Chark is going to go to like my start of the week type wide receiver range, and he's going to be inside my top 16 wide receivers, because Alexander's an incredible corner, and if he doesn't play, he hasn't actually cleared the concussion protocol as of the most recent news that I've seen. So we'll see with DJ Chark. I would expect Alexander to probably be back, because concussions are usually only a 1-week thing, and he did get it on a Thursday night, so that gives him even more time. But if he is out, then you upgrade DJ Chark, and then play the rest: Cole, MVS, Chenault, any of these guys at your own risk as wide receiver 5. So Keelan Cole going up against Chandon Sullivan, Laviska Shenault going up against Josh Jackson. I mean, none of these guys are really in great positions to go off, but I would say Laviska Shenault is the best option out of MVS, Laviska Shenault, and Keelan Cole in this game. But I'm probably not going to be messing around starting any of the tertiary guys for either of these teams. I'll probably just start the 2 number 1s on each team. Tight end wise in this game, you sit Tyler Eifert and then you stream Robert Tonyan. Robert Tonyan's not a stable option by any means, but he is a solid option in what should be a higher scoring game and a big passing day for Aaron Rodgers. And then as far as Tyler Eifert's concerned, he got some volume from Jake Luton, but it's not enough to trust yet. I wouldn't be throwing him into your lineup just because he had a half decent game with a backup quarterback. But he is worth monitoring if you're really screwed at tight end. I guess you could throw him in there, but I'd imagine there's probably better options out there for you. To the next game, Washington at Detroit. quarterback in this game, you can low end stream both guys. Neither Alex Smith or Matt Stafford is a good option in this one. But I would say of the two guys, Alex Smith is the better option. He has the better matchup. So if faced with the choice, I'll play him. But neither guy is inside my top 20. I have both of them. I believe they're like 22 and 23 in my quarterback rankings. So they're just on the borderline of usable. And then to the running back position in this game, you could start both guys, both DeAndre Swift and Antonio Gibson. Neither of them is a sure thing, but they're still both top 24 options due to bye weeks. So we have Gurley and Zeke and CEH out. Their talent, of course, and the position in general. If they get 15 touches, I'll take them having top 24 numbers just because they're talented running backs. And I think 15 touches is enough for them to kind of return value on that top 24 ranking. And then we also saw J.D. McKissic get involved pretty heavily, not only this past week, but going back a couple weeks. I would say he's a flex starter. I'm not willing to say his 14 targets are some kind of trend, and he's going to continue to get that kind of elite usage in the passing game just because Alex Smith is the quarterback and he's checked down Alex. But he's still a top 30 guy in PPR formats for me. So, I mean, if you need a running back starter that you have CEH on bye and you're kind of weak at running back as it is, and McKissic might be available in your league, and I would go pick him up and start him if you need to. To the wide receiver position in this game, only guys that really interest me are the two quote unquote number ones in this one. Terry McLaurin is actually a number one. So I mean, he has the highest advantage of any wide receiver on the week, according to PFF. So he's a top 10 guy for me this week. The two, like he's going to see Desmond Trufant, who has been absolutely brutal this season. He's been washed up for years now. And Terry McLaurin is probably going to wipe the floor with him. And then the reason I said go buy Terry McLaurin last week was because of this schedule that he has coming up. He doesn't face a single shadow cover corner or a great pass defense until the rest of the season. So if you have Terry or you can go acquire Terry, I would do so before this game because I could imagine he's going to have a big one in this one. And then Marvin Jones on the other side of things is going to go up against Ronald Darby, who's actually been quite good this season. He's in line for a decent role, I would say, because Kenny Golladay is out. So he's a back-end wide receiver 3, high-end wide receiver 4, and kind of flex-worthy. But this defense has not been forgiving to wide receivers. It's been one of the best defenses at defending wide receivers. So I would not start Marvin Jones if you don't have to. Again, he's probably inside my top 40, but I like at the back end of that 38, 39, I think is where I have him. And then tight end wise in this game, you obviously can start TJ Hawkinson because he's been an absolute stud. And then I would say you can low end stream Logan Thomas. I think he's my tight end 19 right now. Thomas is obviously a risk, but volume has been there sometimes. So I guess you can kind of trust him from that perspective. Once you get to this range of tight ends, obviously it's kind of boom or bust, whichever way you go. And really outside of the top like 3 or 4 tight ends, it's kind of like that. So to the next game, Houston at Cleveland. As I mentioned, this is going to be probably a pretty quick pace of game. In this one, quick paced offense. Quarterbacks, you can start both of them in this game. Watson has been absolutely outstanding. If you own Deshaun Watson, you know this. 22 plus points every game since Bill O'Brien was fired. And he gets a top 10 matchup again. He may be a sell high, though, if you look at his schedule after this week. His schedule gets very, very hard, especially for the playoffs. So if you can kind of ride high on Deshaun Watson and sell him after this week, I mean, he's a QB2 in fantasy right now, as far as I'm concerned, like his points per game and all that kind of stuff, especially since Bill O'Brien was fired. I'm pretty sure only Kyler Murray is outscoring him right now. So if you can sell Deshaun Watson, maybe you have in one league, I have Tom Brady on my bench and I have Deshaun Watson also, who have been playing Watson over Brady, but Brady has a great playoff schedule and Watson does not. So what I'm probably going to do is sell Deshaun Watson before the trade deadline, or I might just hold on to him and kind of keep him in case Brady like struggles or something. But either way, I think Watson is a great sell high candidate off of this game. After this week is when I would sell him because I think he's going to have another big one in this one. To the running back position, you can start Nick Chubb, who should be back in this game. Kareem Hunt, of course, you can start him. And then whichever D Johnson is the starter. If David Johnson clears his concussion protocol, which he suffered last week, then you can fire up him. And if he doesn't clear his concussion protocol, then Duke Johnson should be a low-end RB2 type play, but I do expect David Johnson to probably suit up for this one, given the fact that the concussion was, I mean, he was ruled out immediately, but concussions are usually a 1-week injury. But you never know. So keep an eye on Duke Johnson if David Johnson's going to be out. And then to the Brown side of things, surprisingly, Hunt was actually better when Nick Chubb was in the lineup, and their schedule gets really easy over the next few weeks. So Chubb himself will be a top 10 running back in his own right, but I still think Kareem Hunt is a top 15 to top 20 guy at minimum because he was a top 12 running back when both of them were healthy. To the wide receiver position in this game, you start both Texans guys. You can see their matchups on the screen right there. Since Bill O'Brien was fired, neither Texans guy has had a game with less than 10 PPR points, and both have had big games. So fire them both up as top 24 guys. Brandon Cooks going up against Denzel Ward, a bit of a tougher matchup there. And then Will Fuller going up against Terrence Mitchell. If those matchups hold up, I would expect Will Fuller to have the bigger game in this one. But they move these guys around quite a bit, so they'll probably both get a solid amount of targets and solid amount of fantasy points. Into the pretty much just Jarvis Landry is the only guy I'm willing to start on the Browns. He's actually currently my start of the week because ETR is, for whatever reason, is very down on him. It's probably because he had a bit of a sloppy game in that sleet snowstorm against the Raiders. Landry did have 11 targets in that game, and that was the first game of him without Odell Beckham Jr. in the lineup. So I'm willing to trust that volume. I think Jarvis Landry is going to be a target hog like Tyler Boyd type without Odell Beckham now there. And he goes up against Eric Murray in this one, and that should be advantage Jarvis Landry. Rashard Higgins, I'm not really looking to fuck around with. If you want to, you can. I'm probably not going to. And then to the tight end position in this game, Austin Hooper is the only tight end in this game that you start. He is the primary benefactor, in my opinion, of Odell Beckham Jr. being out for the season, and he had a solid outing against Las Vegas and should continue to see more volume going forward. I think Austin Hooper, I don't really want to call him a buy low because I don't really think he's that valuable, but I think he's going to be a solid locked and loaded tight end option, similar to kind of like Hunter Henry right now, going forward without Odell in the lineup. To the next game, Tampa Bay at Carolina. And I feel really bad for Carolina, to be honest, because this is now the second time this season that they have to face us being the Buccaneers, I'm a Buccaneers fan, off of a thrashing by the Saints. So I think Tom Brady laid an egg last week on Sunday Night Football, but not only do I expect him to bounce back, I expect him to be pissed off and taking his anger out on Carolina with all his receivers now active. He probably saw those dancing videos on Twitter of Jameis Winston and Demario Davis in the locker room. And I can tell you right now, Tom Brady ain't going to take too kindly to that. And I think he's going to send a message to the Carolina defense in this one. I think you can low-end stream Teddy Bridgewater in this one. Earlier in the season, I would have said sit Teddy Bridgewater, but the Bucs defense has shown a bit of warts since Vita Vea's injury and since some other things have happened. It's a little worse than we thought. It's probably not the best defense in the league. It's definitely one of the better defenses in the league, but I don't think it's the best defense in the league like I thought a couple of weeks ago. I think this one could be higher scoring, and that's kind of what makes me think Teddy's going to be usable this week. And then in this game, at the running back position, there's kind of a lot going on. My start of the week at the running back position in this game is Ronald Jones. I think you can flex Leonard Fournette in this game as well. And I would start, so I'll talk about the Bucs running backs first. So the box score might say that Rojo got outsnapped by Fournette, which is obviously true. It's what happened. But that was a product of the game script. Those first couple drives, Rojo dominated the snaps and the touches with Fournette relegated to just pretty much third down work. I'm still on the side of Rojo over Fournette rest of season going forward, all that kind of stuff. With Rojo as kind of like a top 24 guy going forward and Fournette close behind at RB 28 on the week. I think both are usable, but I would much rather start Ronald Jones in this game, given the matchup against Carolina. They've been brutal against opposing running backs, and the fact that he is going to get the majority of the groundwork, and this game script is not going to be like it was against New Orleans. And if it is, I'm going to be really, really surprised. And then to the Panthers side of things, Christian McCaffrey is pretty much all but ruled out in this game. So if he's not playing in this game, then obviously Mike Davis becomes a top 18 auto start, and you start him in this game. So right now I'm operating under the assumption that Christian McCaffrey is not going to play, and that means Mike Davis is a top 18 running back. So you could definitely fire him up with no worries. To the wide receiver position, I can actually make a case that you could start all 6 wide receivers in this game, which in fact, I don't think I've ever said so far this season in 10 weeks of doing this show. All 6 of these receivers in this game are in my top 40. The best wide receiver trio in football, in my opinion, should have their coming out game. As I mentioned, I think this offense can be pissed off that the Saints basically clamped them down. All 3 are in my top 22. Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, all 3 are up there. With currently Chris Godwin has the highest advantage in his matchup, and I currently have him rated the highest as a result, even though he is still banged up, still dealing with a thumb injury. They're all really close. I have him like 16, 19, 21 or something like that. So All those guys are startable. And then with the Panthers side of things, the way that Curtis Samuel has been putting up numbers and playing right now, I don't think I can sit him, especially not when he faces currently on the screen right now. You'll see Sean Murphy Bunting. You can't actually see his PFF grade, but he is actually has the worst PFF grade of all the corners on the Bucks, and it's definitely factual, being that I watch the game so closely. He has 100% been the weakest cornerback on this team. So with Curtis Samuel set to go up against him, he could be the number one receiver in terms of fantasy production yet again. Going back a couple of weeks now, where Curtis Samuel is outperforming the other two guys. I'm not sure if they're going to use shadow coverage on either Anderson or Moore, but we'll see when the data comes out. Either way, I expect this one to be higher scoring, which is why I think you can start all three Panthers receivers. If I had to guess, I would say Carlton Davis is probably going to shadow Robbie Anderson, and Jamel Dean's probably going to shadow DJ Moore. But what do I know? I don't work for PFF or anything. So keep an eye. Follow Ian Hartz on Twitter. He usually tweets those out generally around the time that this video is coming out, or when you're seeing this. To the tight end position, you start Rob Gronkowski. He's an every week starter, and what was a putrid game for the offense. They were terrible. Gronkowski still managed to have 6 targets, and he's still a top 5 tight end for me going forward. The way this offense is going to put up points, the way that it's going to start to take shape with Antonio Brown and Chris Godwin now in the fold, and not just Mike Evans having to carry the load. I think this offense is going to get really good, and as I've mentioned, their schedule is easy. They're not going to be playing the New Orleans Saints every single week. I expect it's going to be pretty much recency bias for those for people out there that are like, oh, downgrade Gronk, downgrade Mike Evans. Like, yeah, they had a terrible game. It's not going to happen again, especially not against the Panthers this week, and probably not against a lot of the matchups that they have going forward, except for maybe the Rams, who are a pretty good defense. To the next game, we have Los Angeles Chargers at Miami Dolphins. We have the battle of the 5th and 6th overall pick, Justin Herbert and Tua Tagovailoa. I think in this game, you can make a reasonable case for starting both of them. I would say Herbert is more of a strong start and Tua is more of a streamer, but it's going to be the battle of the rookies in this one, and both are startable, as I mentioned. Herbert is still going off on a weekly basis pretty much, and Tua has a great matchup and looked very good in his own right last week. So I think he's going to be a guy that you want to be using if you're in a pinch and you have Mahomes on bye or whatever the case is. To the running back position, we got some news just before I started recording this about Justin Jackson. Apparently he's not expected to play, according to Anthony Lynn. He said that he's going to be practicing, but he's not going to make an appearance in the game so they can rest him up and all that kind of stuff. So that makes Troymaine Pope, in my opinion, if he's back. He had a concussion, I believe, last week, and that's why he was out. And Josh Kelly, top 36 running back options. Do I know which one's going to get more work? No, absolutely not. But I think Troymaine Pope is currently who I have ranked higher, just because they seem to not want to give Josh Kelly all the work. Please, Austin Eckler, just come back. I want to see you be a top 3 running back. Anyway, the Dolphins running backs, also equally gross situation. We saw Salvin Ahmed or Ahmed, I don't even know how to pronounce his name, and Jordan Howard get the bulk of the work in this backfield. If Matt Breida isn't out there, in my opinion, and while Gaskin is hurt, I don't want to start any running back as a top 36 guy. If Matt Breida plays, then I'll probably play him at the back end of that top 36 area. But either way, I'm really not excited about this backfield until Myles Gaskin is back. To the wide receiver position in this game, you can start Devontae Parker, Keenan Allen, and then you would flex Mike Williams in this one. Parker should see a target bump with Preston Williams likely out for a couple weeks. I believe they're placing him on IR. This is a good matchup for him against Casey Hayward, who has been very subpar this season, so I wouldn't be too worried about that. And then on the Chargers side of things, you'll see the matchups on the screen right there. Keenan Allen going up against Nick Needham is just advantage Allen all day and every day. And then Mike Williams has a bit of a tougher matchup against Byron Jones, but he's a big play waiting to happen, so I don't think he's a bad option either. Allen has basically been nothing short of spectacular since Herbert's emergence. He's a top 10 receiver every single week, and he has a great matchup in this one. And then Mike Williams has had 3 great outings in the last 4 games, so I think, he's not a safe option, but he is definitely a guy who can get you a big kind of boom week, or at least just get 100 yards, kind of 7 catches type stat line. So Mike Williams is definitely usable as a top 36 option as well. And then to the tight end position in this game, I would say you could stream both guys. Henry's kind of like a low ceiling, high floor option. He's not really going to finish top 5 on the week, but he'll probably finish in that 12 to 7 range every week because of his target volume. And then Mike Gesicki in this game also sees a bump, even more so, I would say, than Parker, due to Preston Williams being out. So keep an eye on Mike Gesicki. He's probably going to be pretty solid for the next couple of weeks with Preston Williams now on short-term IR. To the Denver at Las Vegas Raiders. Quarterback wise in this game, both are low end streamers. Both Drew Lock and Derek Carr are usable. They're top 15 neither is a top 15 option for me, but both are usable in what should be a relatively high scoring game. To the running back position in this game, you can start Josh Jacobs, flex both Gordon and Lindsey. So on the Raiders side of things, Jacobs' touch baseline makes him very safe week over week. Obviously, if you have Josh Jacobs, you know he's getting the touches, but not exactly doing a lot with him. We haven't really seen his ceiling for a while. And I think that's going to start to pick up as their schedule eases up a little bit. But I don't think Jacobs really has like a top 10 ceiling just because he's really just not playing that well, in my opinion. And then on the Broncos side of things, Gordon saw a pretty big downgrade in touches last week, but Atlanta has low-key been a bad matchup for running backs, and Gordon still ran the most routes and played 60% of the snaps. So Melvin Gordon is the best running back to own in this backfield. Now, he's currently my RB20, and I think you can start him, but Lindsey is also startable as a high-end RB3 in this game. Now, wide receiver, I'm going to give myself a little pat on the back for calling the Jerry Jeudy breakout game. So I think you can start him. He has a great matchup against an up-and-down Trayvon Mullen, as you can see on the screen there, but he had a great game against Atlanta, and I think his confidence is starting to build, and hopefully this becomes a trend of Jerry Jeudy becoming the stud receiver that we all thought, including myself, Jerry Jeudy could be one of the top route runners in the NFL, and I think he's already at that point. I actually saw PFF tweet something out where like PFF Sam was like, Jerry Jeudy's already a top 5 route runner in the vein of like a Stephon Diggs or a Calvin Ridley or someone like that. I agree with him. I think Jerry Jeudy is already one of the best route runners in the league, and I think he's only going to continue to get better. He is someone I'm definitely excited if I own and stashed him all season, because I think he's going to really turn it on the back half of the season. I think he's going to be a guy I'm really high on next year. And then in this game also, you can low-end flex Tim Patrick, who's going up against Nevin Lawson, who's been kind of brutal this year. And then anyone else in this game, I really don't want to start at receiver. Henry Ruggs, you can probably throw out there. Both him and Tim Patrick are in my top 48, so they're both usable, but they aren't great options either. The Vegas receivers have the following matchups. You can see Henry Ruggs actually has the worst matchup there, and he has the worst PFF grade of the starting receivers for the Las Vegas Raiders. So we'll hopefully he's able to kind of do what Jerry Jeudy is doing and get a confidence builder type game. Hunter Renfrow going up against Essang Bassey actually ain't a bad matchup, but I'm not brave enough to throw him in my lineup in anything other than like a deep dynasty league. And then to the tight end position in this game, Noah Fant and Darren Waller are both every week starters, with Albert Okwuegbunam now out for the rest of the season. I bet you didn't think I could say that name perfectly, but I can. Noah Fant becomes an every week starter and a guy that needs to be in your lineup, because Noah Fant, without Albert O in the lineup, is a top 6 tight end rest of the season. And then Darren Waller was already in that territory, and you probably knew that if you had Waller. To the next game, Buffalo at Arizona. As I mentioned, this game will be the fastest paced game of the slate. There's going to be a lot of fantasy points in this one. Quarterbacks, you start them both. Kyler Murray has had one game, where he didn't finish as a top 6 quarterback on the week, and he finished QB 10. So he's as safe as they come. I would expect a big game from Josh Allen as well. He already showed numerous times this season that he can perform in a good matchup, and this is a good matchup. So running back wise in this game, obviously you would start Chase Edmonds with Kenyon Drake still missing time. Edmonds may not have had the stat line that you were looking for if you have him, but he did play 90+% of the snaps. He had 28 touches, and he's basically locked in for that kind of workhorse role again. It is worth noting that Kenyon Drake is now practicing, so you might have Edmonds and that's it for this week. But it may, hopefully, if you're lucky, if you need him, then you'll have him for next week too. But it looks like Kenyon Drake is starting to get on track to returning. And if he does return, Chase Edmonds is obviously downgraded to like a running back 31 or something like that. And then to the Bills side of things at the running back position, I'll put the splits from last week, the snap rates that they had. Zach Moss actually out-snapped Devin Singletary 56% to 46%. And then the running back usage, he had 11 touches or 11 opportunities, and Devin Singletary had 5 opportunities. So neither guy really had a great game last week, but the throwing or the passing game was working so well for the Bills against the Seahawks, as it should. As I mentioned, it was going to be a high volume passing game for Josh Allen, because the Seahawks are just absolutely dreadful and can't cover anyone on the back end, and their run defense is actually pretty solid. But it is worth noting that Zach Moss is looking like he's starting to overtake Devin Singletary, which is great news if you have Zach Moss. Probably not so much great news if you have Devin Singletary, and I do have Singletary in a dynasty league, and it's looking like his time in the sun's going to be up pretty soon. To the wide receiver position in this game, you start the two studs. DeAndre Hopkins and Stephon Diggs are obvious starters. Diggs is, as I mentioned, obvious starter. He has a decisive advantage against Patrick Peterson. As you can see on the screen, he's matched up against Pat Pete in this game. I'm pretty sure he's probably going to shadow him as well. Smokey Brown should be decent in this one as well. Going up against Dre Kirkpatrick, I would say you just want pieces of this game. Even if it's Cole Beasley. If you need to start Cole Beasley, I don't hate it because this is going to be a high-scoring game. There's going to be a lot of points in this one. And generally speaking, when you can project a lot of points, it means that there's going to be a lot of fantasy producers, especially in a game like this where we expect the points to come via the air and through the passing game. I would expect probably 2, 3, 4 receivers in this game or top 25 options on the week. So any of the 3 Bills receivers, I'm fine with starting if you need to. And then on the Cardinals side of things, DeAndre Hopkins is going to see Tre'Davious White in shadow coverage. It doesn't really help him, but it's not enough to make me nervous about D-Hop. Kirk has finally emerged. It looks like this team does finally have a number 2 receiver, and it is Christian Kirk. But Kyler is not a consistent passer. He gets a lot of his fantasy points on the ground, and he can support DeAndre Hopkins, but I wouldn't expect Christian Kirk to be consistent. He goes up against Levi Wallace this week. It's a good matchup, but I don't expect Christian Kirk to be this like every week wide receiver 2. He is pretty high up in ECR right now, and I expect him to probably stay around that range for the rest of the week until the week actually until Sunday. So Christian Kirk, you can start him, but again, I'm not totally trusting him. I think this is going to be a big time Kyler Murray, Chase Edmonds, DeAndre Hopkins game, and there might not be a lot of production left over for anyone else. And then in this game, neither team has a tight end to speak of, so I won't waste your time talking about that. San Francisco and New Orleans. Drew Brees and Nick Mullins, neither of them are great starts, but I would say Drew Brees is a much better start. Drew Brees and the Saints could be in for a bit of a trap game in this one because, I mean, they just thrashed the Buccaneers. They're probably coming off of like a emotional high, and they might not play as well as they want to in this one. But Brees definitely sees an upgrade to his floor, and both Michael Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders are back. So that definitely upgrades Drew Brees, and it makes his passing game much better in general. And I think it helps Alvin Kamara, to be honest, because Alvin Kamara, while he's probably not going to get 14, 15 targets a game anymore because Michael Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders are now there, what we want with running backs, especially if you're not in a full PPR, if you're in a half PPR or standard league, we want touchdowns. And Alvin Kamara getting touchdowns is a virtual guarantee if this offense is a top 10 offense, which it will be with these guys back. So as I mentioned, at the running back position, you obviously will start Alvin Kamara. To the San Francisco running backs, you will start both of them, in my opinion. I think both of them are still startable as top 32 options. And then Latavius Murray, if you're absolutely desperate, you could probably throw into your lineup. Alvin Kamara, low-key, does have a bit of a tough schedule the rest of the way, which is not ideal. He does play the Falcons twice, who have actually been pretty good against the run. And then he has a couple other difficult matchups as well. It's not ideal. It's something to monitor, but it's not really going to make me say, oh, go sell Alvin Kamara for Derrick Henry just because their playoff schedules are different. I don't necessarily think that's a smart idea because Alvin Kamara does get so much work in the passing game that it shouldn't matter who his ground matchup is. And then, as I mentioned with the Niners running backs, I think you could start both of them. McKinnon and Hasty are really not that different. I know ECR has like an 18 running back difference. Like Jerick McKinnon was like RB 18 in ECR, and like Michael Hasty was like RB like 39 or something. It shouldn't be that big of a gap because knowing Kyle Shanahan, JaMychal Hasty will be the back to own this week because that's just how the San Francisco backfield works. It's never the same guy every week, unless Raheem Mostert's in the lineup, to be honest. And whenever Raheem Mostert comes back, that obviously makes JaMychal Hasty droppable, and then Jerick McKinnon significantly downgraded. But as of right now, I think both of these guys are top 32 running backs. And then at wide receiver in this game, you start Michael Thomas, you start Brandon Ayuk, and then I would say you low-end flex Miles, or why do I keep calling him Miles Sanders? Emmanuel Sanders. Ayuk gets Lattimore in coverage, not necessarily a shadow matchup, but Lattimore only really performs against Mike Evans this year. If you go back to his game logs on PFF, he actually has only recorded a grade of 65 or higher in the 2 matchups that they played the Buccaneers. So, I mean, Marshawn Lattimore, for whatever reason, just hates Mike Evans and wants to get up extra good on Mike Evans for those matchups, and then just decides to not perform in the rest of them. For what it's worth, PFF actually projects Deebo Samuel to potentially play in this game, and I looked at the most recent news is that he does have a chance to play. I wouldn't be starting him if he does play because, I mean, we've seen him leave early with re-aggravation injuries and all that kind of stuff. I want to see him play a full allotment of snaps, and then I'm willing to start him. But Michael Thomas, on the other hand, auto start. You throw him into your lineup. I know he didn't have a great matchup last week against Carlton Davis, but that's not the case this week. And then obviously Sanders, not an auto start, but I do think he's usable in a pinch. Had a pretty solid game against Tampa last week. As you can see the matchups on the screen right now, Michael Thomas going up against Jason Verrett. Not a great matchup, but Michael Thomas should be able to beat that. Emmanuel Sanders against Emmanuel Mosley. That's more so the better matchup on the field, which is why I said you could probably use Emmanuel Sanders in a pinch. To the tight end position, Jared Cook is definitely a startable guy. You're just hoping for a big player touchdown with him. Not much else to be said there. And then I would sit both of the 49ers tight ends, both of the 49ers tight ends, Ross Dwelley and Jordan Reed. Jordan Reed was coming off of an injury last week and played a limited role. I would avoid starting a tight end from this kind of committee right now until we get some clarity. But if you're going to risk starting one of these two tight ends, I would risk it with Reed because he had his down game in terms of snap share and stuff last week. Maybe it was because he was coming off of injury and he'll get back into more of a normal snap share this week. But again, if you don't have to start him, I probably wouldn't. I would like to see what happens first. On to the next game, Seattle at Los Angeles Rams. Quarterback-wise in this game, it's pretty easy. Both of them are starts. Goff is in a smash spot, and Russell Wilson is Russell Wilson. To the running back position in this game, they're both really injury dependent, I would say. Chris Carson and Darrell Henderson, you're going to need to closely monitor practice reports for both of these guys this week because they're both coming off of injury. Darrell Henderson coming off of a bye should be good to go. I would expect him to play. But Chris Carson, his status is still kind of up in the air. We'll have to see how much he practices. If Carson is out again, I would not start DJ Dallas very confidently. I think you could still throw him in there as like a top 36 running back, but I don't think he's a top 20 running back like I thought he was last week. We saw his role was not nearly as dominant as it was 2 weeks ago when Carson was first out. So I would avoid starting DJ Dallas if Carson's out, but I think Carson's going to be back anyway, so you probably won't have to deal with that problem. Cam Akers, if you've been holding him, I don't really know what to tell you. We'll kind of see how he acclimates to the offense. But as far as I'm concerned, it's coaching malpractice to give the ball to Cam Akers over Darrell Henderson because Cam Akers has shown some flashes, but Darrell Henderson has been far better on a play-in, play-out basis as far as receiving the ball, running the ball, in protection, all that kind of stuff. So Cam Akers is a decent stash, but I'm not expecting him to be like a league winner or anything. Wide receiver-wise in this game, you'd start both the top two guys on each team. It's pretty simple in this one. As you can see the matchups on the screen there, DK Metcalf going up against Darius Williams. Absolutely smash matchup for him in that one. Tyler Lockett going up against Troy Hill. Both guys should be pretty good in this one. I expect this to be a higher scoring game, specifically on Seattle's side. I think they put up a lot of points. And I would say you just want pieces of this game because Seattle's probably going to put up a lot of points that might force the Rams to throw more than they usually are. Robert Woods going up against Quentin Dunbar, who's been absolutely brutal this season compared to last year when he was actually quite good with Washington. And then Cooper Kupp going up against DJ Reed is a great matchup. He has one of the best advantages according to PFF this week. So Cooper Kupp, I expect to have a great matchup great game as far as the Rams receivers go. And then at the tight end position, I would avoid every tight end in this game. The Rams tight ends are a committee now. Everett and Higbee they're both like basically running identical roles, like identical snaps, routes, all that kind of stuff. So you're never going to know which one to start. So I wouldn't start any of them. And then the Seattle Seahawks tight ends, it's kind of been the same thing lately. Will Disley is creeping up on Greg Olson's snap share, and it's becoming a tight end committee there as well. So I wouldn't start any tight ends if you can help it in this game. If you absolutely had to start a tight end in this game, I would probably say to start Tyler Higbee, but I mean, Gerald Everett could very easily outperform him, and honestly, so could either the Seahawks tight end. So just avoid that tight end committee situation in that game. Final 4 o'clock game that we have here, and it's kind of weird. They actually have like a nice balance of 4 o'clock and 1 o'clock games this week. I believe they have like 5 of each. So that's going to be kind of interesting because we normally would see like 8 1 o'clock games and like 3 4 o'clock games. So should be an interesting Sunday of football all the way through. Cincinnati at Pittsburgh is the game I'm talking about. The quarterback position in this game, you could stream both quarterbacks. Both are top 16 options for me with high floors, but neither of them has like a great ceiling. Joe Burrow obviously does have a ceiling, but in this game, I don't expect him to be Superman against the Steelers defense because it's still a very good pass rush and the Bengals O-line is not very good. And then Big Ben hasn't really shown a ceiling thus far this season, so I'm not going to pretend like he has some elite ceiling anymore until I see it. And then at the running back position, both guys are pretty simple in this one. If Mixon plays, which is worth noting because as of Wednesday, he didn't practice. So if Mixon is out again, you know the drill. You start Gio Bernard. But this is really concerning if Joe Mixon is not able to get back on the field after a bye week and a week prior him being out for that game. So, I mean, Joe Mixon's definitely a guy you want to keep an eye on, and don't be dropping Gio Bernard quite yet. I would say if you still have Gio Bernard, just hold on to him for a couple, like a week or two more until we know more about Joe Mixon's injury. And even at that point, we're at this point in the season when you want to start picking up handcuffs, because if you're in week 13, for example, and you're on a bye week, or like it's the week before the playoffs and Zeke Elliott blows his knee out, then Tony Pollard's going to be an elite waiver wire ad. And if you don't have fab, like I don't in a lot of my leagues, I tend to be very aggressive with fab spend throughout the season, because I think a lot of people are too conservative. Personally, I just feel like everyone's like, oh, I'm going to spend $1 here, $3 here. It's like, no, if I want someone, I'll spend $10 on them. Like I'll spend $15 on them. I don't care. So if that's the case in your league and you have low fab right now, I'd be starting to stash guys like Gio Bernard and guys like Mike Davis and guys like any of these high-end handcuffs that we know going into your playoff home stretch, because if any of the starters get injured, you know you have a locked and loaded like top 20 running back at minimum with a lot of these guys. And then on the other side of things, with the running backs of the Steelers, James Conner was pretty much awful last week. I would expect him to bounce back in this one. Last week was kind of just a weird game where the Cowboys suddenly got out to this weird lead and the Steelers had to play from behind and the offense was just not efficient overall. So I wouldn't blame Conner too much for last week. I think it was just kind of a fluke game. To the wide receiver position in this game, I actually just wrote all of the above here because I'm willing to start any of these receivers. The scary thing is the Steelers front versus the Bengals O-line. This could honestly derail the entire offense of the Bengals, because I mean, we saw against, I think it was the Baltimore game and the Indianapolis game, the Cincinnati Bengals just can't handle elite pass rushes. And if that happens, Burrow is going to be under pressure, under duress the whole game. And it's going to be hard for him to get the ball to anyone other than like his running backs and Tyler Boyd. So I would slightly downgrade T. Higgins, Boyd, and AJ Green in this one to lower end options. I would say Higgins and Boyd are more like high end wide receiver threes in that like top 30 range. And then AJ Green is more of like a wide receiver 4, just because I expect the offense to maybe struggle a bit in this one. The matchups are as follows, though. You can see AJ Green going up against Steven Nelson, T. Higgins against Joe Hayden, and Tyler Boyd against Cam Sutton. So, I mean, none of them are really great corners, but the pass rush should be enough to slow this offense down a bit. And then on the Steelers side of things, all three of them are in my top 24 yet again. I did this last week, and thankfully, none of them disappointed. They all had pretty solid games, and I think they're going to be slated to do well again this week. Deontay Johnson going up against William Jackson is probably the worst matchup on the field. William Jackson's probably the best corner on the Bengals. So maybe Chase Claypool and Juju Smith-Schuster have the better game in this one, but we've seen Deontay Johnson get great target volume when he's on the field and not leaving games early. So I am willing to start all three of these guys as top 24 guys, as I mentioned. To the tight end position in this game, you only start Eric Ebron. You don't mess around with Drew Sample. I would say it's not a good matchup for Ebron, but he has been a very safe option. So top 10 is kind of where he's going to live for the rest of the season for me, because he just consistently catches 4 or 5 passes for like 50 yards, maybe gets into the end zone. That's just kind of what you want out of a low end tight end 1. And I think that's exactly what you're going to get out of Eric Ebron. All right, finally, we're closing this one out. I'm not exactly sure how long I've gone on this one, but I feel like it's kind of a long time. So Baltimore at New England. Quarterback-wise in this game, you start both of them. Both of them are rushing quarterbacks. Cam Newton and Lamar Jackson should have high floors in this game. And I think this could be the game you were waiting for from Lamar. I kind of got that gut feeling where he's going to go off in this one for a solid passing stat line, a lot of rushing yards and that kind of stuff, because the Patriots have just not been good against the run, as I'll talk about in a second. To the running back position, you start J.K. Dobbins, you flex Gus Edwards. I just wrote TBD on the Patriots backfield, because on Monday Night Football, we saw Damian Harris exit Monday night's game with a chest injury late in the game. So I want to see what his status is going into this game. But if he is out, I would flex Burkhead or White as like a top 35 running back each. And if he plays, I'll flex Harris, but that's it. I won't mess around with the other guys if Damian Harris is playing. And all I got to say about the Ravens backfield is, please, for the love of God, Mark Ingram, stay away, because this offense is starting to look better, even against bad matchups, with the running game the way it is right now. And I think to add Mark Ingram back will put a wrench in things and get less touches for your better running backs, because both of the other running backs are better than Mark Ingram. And Mark Ingram honestly deserves to get 0 touches because Gus Edwards is a better runner. J.K. Dobbins is a better receiver. J.K. Dobbins is better in pass protection. They're both better at making people miss. Like, I just don't think Mark Ingram deserves to, or should be getting any work whatsoever. Hopefully he's out for a little while longer while the other guys establish their roles. I'll put this on the screen right now, but in the 2 games that Mark Ingram has been out for, Dobbins has been the leader of this backfield as a quote-unquote feature back. I always talk about that 60% threshold for running backs, and Dobbins has hit that at an average of, I believe he had 56% last week and like 66% 2 weeks ago. So he's definitely getting the snaps you want to see him get. Carry-wise, it's been pretty even across the board between him and Gus Edwards, both 27 carries. Target-wise, 4 targets, 3 targets, but the routes aren't even close. Dobbins is just not getting as many targets as he probably should be, given the amount of routes that he's running. And then, as you can see there, Dobbins has also been quite a bit more efficient, 5.2 yards per touch compared to 4.17, which is still solid from Gus Edwards. Touch usage on the surface is similar, as you can see there. 27 targets, or 31 touches for Dobbins, 30 touches for Gus Edwards. And if you look at the Ravens' rest of season schedule, you can see they have Patriots, who are awful against the run, as I mentioned, Titans, Steelers, who are good against the run, but they already ran for a combined 200 yards between the 2 backs in the first meeting. And then Cowboys bad against the run, Browns bad against the run, Jaguars bad against the run, and then the Giants are pretty good against the run. But by that point in the season, they might not be trying as hard because they're a bad team. So I think the Ravens really have an opportunity to get their offense back on track, back to the level that we saw it last year. I'm really betting on that happening. I think Lamar Jackson's going to get back on track. Mark Andrews going to get back on track. And then Dobbins and Edwards, hopefully it's just these 2 guys going forward, are able to carve out nice roles for themselves as well. And Dobbins could end up being a very valuable fantasy asset going forward if the schedule and his usage kind of keeps up. To the wide receiver position in this game, not great options. I would say you can flex Jacoby Myers and Hollywood Brown. In terms of matchups, Myers gets Marcus Peters in coverage, which is not good. And Hollywood Brown gets JC Jackson. So neither of these guys are great options, nor are they in like smash matchups, but they're both in my top 40 right now, just because I expect some points in this game, especially from the Ravens side of things. So, I mean, you can throw them out there, but I don't think either of them are great starts. And then tight end wise in this game, you could start Mark Andrews. I know he hasn't really been great, but I said last week on the Trade Target show that after this Colts game that they just played is what that's when Lamar and the Ravens offense should turn it around and start to be the top 5 offense that we saw last year. So I would say that Mark Andrews should be the last week that you can buy him low. I think his value is the lowest it's ever going to be, and I think it's only going to go up from here. So definitely keep an eye on Mark Andrews. To the last game of the slate, Monday Night Football. I'll run through this one real quick. Sit both quarterbacks in this game because Kirk Cousins against the Bears ain't going to end well, and Nick Foles sucks. So running back wise in this game, you start both guys because we have one of the most efficient workhorses in the NFL right now in Dalvin Cook, just averaging like 6 yards per carry and just completely breaking fantasy football right now. And the other is the least most efficient workhorse in the NFL. But David Montgomery is still a workhorse, which means he's still a top 15 running back in my rankings because he gets way too much volume not to pretend like he's a great or he's a solid option to start. To the wide receiver position in this game, you can see I'll have the matchups on the screen right now. Allen Robinson going up against Chris Boyd. Not going to end well. None of these Minnesota corners are really going to have a chance against Robinson, Mooney, and Miller, who are all pretty solid receivers, with Allen Robinson being an elite receiver. So I would say those, I don't really want to start Mooney or Anthony Miller, but I think you could do worse in terms of the type of receivers that you could just pick up off the waiver wire and throw into your lineup if you're really, really struggling with bye weeks. Maybe you had Julio and Calvin Ridley and Tyreek Hill on your team, like you're just screwed at receiver. I think you could throw Mooney or Miller into your lineup. And then to the Vikings side of things, you have Justin Jefferson going up against Jalen Johnson, who's been pretty good this year, as is the Bears defense in general against receivers. And then Adam Thielen against Kyle Fuller, also been pretty good this year. So, I mean, these guys see a downgrade. They're both in my top 20 still. They would probably be in my top 10 if this was like a great matchup, but it's not a great matchup. So I think you definitely could still roll out Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, but I would temper expectations because this is not a good matchup against fantasy wide receivers, nor is it a good matchup for Kirk Cousins' offensive line or anything like that. So temper expectations to for the two Vikings receivers. On the tight end side of things, and then we'll get out of here, we have Jimmy Graham. Obviously, you start him because he is
pretty much just a red zone weapon. Obviously, you need him to get a touchdown if he's going to return kind of tight end, top 5 tight end value, but that's the case with most tight ends. And I think Jimmy Graham has as good a chance as any in this game, where I expect the Vikings pass defense to just kind of be overmatched in this one. And then Irv Smith, we saw him get into the end zone twice last week. We've seen his usage go up consistently, really since a couple of weeks ago when they kind of decided that Kyle Rudolph no longer should be the starting tight end. So if Irv Smith is still on your waiver wire, go get him, because I think you can start him as a top 15 option. All right. We got through it, guys. It was a pretty long episode. We had a lot of interruptions on my part. If you saw my face moving around, you probably noticed that. But as always, guys, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. It helps us out tremendously. Comment any of your thoughts down below. Even if you just want to say that you left a like on the video, go ahead and do that. If you want to say that my why did I shave my mustache? It's still Movember. I mean, it was itchy. That's why I shaved it. So subscribe to the channel if you're new, guys. Hit the bell icon if you want to be notified anytime we go live, anytime we post videos. Peace out, guys. Enjoy your Wednesday, and I'll see you next time.